All right, so we are going to pick up where we left off. So Mom has gotten a job. Luke's mom has gotten a job. She's working at a factory. She's having late nights. And something big happened last time. Although it may not seem very big to us, for Luke it was huge. So he's always been tucked in by his mom. That's something special that he's always gotten because he's the shadow child of their family. And now he has told Mom, although I don't think he really meant it because of the way that he acted with turning towards the wall, he told Mom that she didn't have to tuck him in anymore. So that connection that he had with her, he's starting to kind of lose it a little bit. So we're going to pick up on chapter 8 and see what happens. And I don't know if you guys are noticing the backgrounds that I'm choosing. I'm trying to choose backgrounds that are similar to what I picture in my head as I'm reading for the setting of that paragraph. They're not exact, so they're not going to be exactly, and you might picture something a little bit different, but I found something similar to what I was picturing, so just to give you a little bit of a feel, to set the mood a little bit, set the setting up. All right, so one cool rainy morning a few weeks later, Luke's family left in such a rush they barely had time to say goodbye. They dashed out the door after breakfast, Matthew and Mark complaining about their packed lunches, Dad calling back, "I'm going to that auction up at Chidlesville. Won't be home until supper." Mother hurried back and handed Luke a bag of cracklings and 3 pears and some biscuits from the night before. She muttered, "So you won't get hungry," and gave him a quick kiss on the head. Then she was gone too. Luke peeked around the stairway door, surveying the chaos of dirty pans and crumb-covered plates left in the kitchen. He knew not to look out as far as the window, but he did anyway. His heart gave a strange jump when he saw the window was covered. Someone must have pulled the shade the night before to try to keep the kitchen warm, and then forgot to raise it in the morning. Luke dared to lean out a little further. Yes, the shade was down on the other window too. For the first time in almost 6 months, he could step out into the kitchen and not worry about being seen. He could run, skip, jump, dance even, on the vast linoleum without fear. He could clean up the kitchen and surprise Mother. He could do anything. He put his right foot out, tentatively, not quite daring to put his full weight on it. The floor squeaked. He froze. Nothing happened. But he retreated anyway. He went back up the stairs, crawled along the second-floor hallway to avoid the windows, and climbed the stairs to the attic. He was so disgusted with himself he could taste it. "I'm a coward. I'm a chicken. I deserve to be locked away in this attic forever," ran through his head. No, he countered himself. "I'm cautious. I'm making a plan." He climbed up onto the stool on top of a trunk that served as his perch for watching out the back vents. The neighborhood behind his house was fully occupied now. He knew all the families and had come up with names for most of them. The Big Car family had 4 expensive cars sitting in their driveway. The Gold family all had hair the color of sunshine. The Birdbrain family had set a row of 30 birdhouses along their backyard fence, even though Luke could have told them it was pointless to do that until spring. The house he could see best, right behind the Garner's backyard, was occupied by the Sports family. 2 teenage boys lived there, and their deck overflowed with soccer balls, baseball bats, tennis rackets, basketballs, hockey sticks, and apparatus from games Luke could only guess at. Today, he wasn't interested in games. He was interested in seeing the families leave. He had noticed before that all the houses were empty by 9 in the morning, with kids off to school and grown-ups off to work. 3 or 4 of the women didn't seem to have jobs, but they left too, returning late in the afternoon with shopping bags. Today, he just had to make sure no one was staying home sick. The Gold family left first. 2 blonde heads in one car, 2 blonde heads in another. The Sports family was next, the boys carrying football pads and helmets, their mother teetering on high heels. Then there was a flurry of cars streaming from every driveway onto the still sparkling new streets. Luke counted each person, keeping track so carefully that he made scratches on the wall, and counted the scratches twice again at the end. Yes, 28 people gone. He was safe. Luke scrambled down from his chair, his head spinning with plans. First, he'd clean up the kitchen, then he'd start some bread for supper. He'd never made bread before, but he'd watched Mother a million times. Then maybe he could pull the shades in the rest of the house and clean it thoroughly. He wouldn't vacuum, that'd be too loud. But he could dust and scrub and polish. Mother would be so pleased. Then, in the afternoon, before Matthew or Mark or the kids in the neighborhood got back, he could put something on for supper, maybe potato soup. Why, he could do this every day. He'd never considered housework or cooking particularly thrilling before, Matthew and Mark always scoffed at it as women's work, but it was better than nothing. And maybe, just maybe, if this worked, he could convince Dad to let him sneak out to the barn and help there too. Luke was so excited. He stepped into the kitchen without a second thought this time. Who cared if the floor creaked? No one was there to hear it. He gathered up dishes from the table and piled them into the sink, scrubbing everything with extraordinary zeal. He measured out flour and lard and milk and yeast and was putting it all in a bowl when it occurred to him it might be okay to turn on the radio, very softly. Nobody'd hear, and if they did, they'd just figure the family had forgotten to turn it off, just as they'd forgotten to raise the shades. The bread was in the oven, and Luke was picking up lint by hand from the living room rug when he heard tires on the gravel driveway. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, too early for the school bus, or Mother or Dad. Luke sprinted for the stairs, hoping whoever it was would just go away. No luck. He heard the side door creaking open. Then, Dad exclaiming, "What the?" He was back early. That shouldn't matter, but hiding on the staircase, Luke finally felt like the radio was as loud as an entire orchestra, like the smell of baking bread could fill 3 counties. "Luke!" Dad yelled. Luke heard his father's hand on the doorknob. He opened the door. I was just trying to help," Luke blubbered. I was safe. You left the shades down, so I thought it was okay, and I made sure that everyone was gone from the neighborhood." Dad glared. "You can't be sure," he snapped. "People like that, they get deliveries all the time. They get sick and come home from work. They have maids come during the day." Luke could have protested. No, the maids never come before the kids get home from school, but he didn't want to give himself away any more than he already had. "The shades were down," he said. "I didn't turn on a single light. Even if there were 1,000 people back there, nobody would know I was here. Please, I've just got to do something. Look, I made bread and cleaned up, and what if a government inspector or someone had stopped by here?" "I would have hidden, like always." Dad was shaking his head. "And leave them smelling bread baking in an empty house? You don't seem to understand," he said. "You can't take any chances. You can't, because..." At that precise moment, the buzzer on the oven went off, sounding as loud as a siren. Dad gave Luke a dirty look and stalked over to the oven. He pulled out the 2 bread pans and tossed them on the stovetop. He flipped off the radio. "I don't want you in this kitchen again," he said. "You stay hidden. That's an order." He went out the door without looking back. Luke fled up the stairs. He wanted to stomp angrily, but he couldn't. No noise allowed. In his room, he hesitated, too upset to read, too restless to do anything else. He kept hearing, "You stay hidden, that's an order," echoing in his ears. But he'd been hidden. He'd been careful. To prove his point, to himself at least, he climbed back up on his perch by the back vents and looked out the quiet neighborhood. All the driveways were empty. Nothing moved, not even the flag on the Gold family's flagpole or the spokes on the Birdbrain family's fake windmill. And then, out of the corner of his eyes, Luke caught a glimpse of something behind one window of the Sports family's house. A face. A child's face. In a house where 2 boys already lived. Chapter 9. Luke was so surprised he lost his balance and almost fell backwards off the trunk. By the time he recovered and righted himself, the face was gone. Had he imagined it? Was it just one of the Sports family brothers home early from school? Kids got sick, like Dad said, or they decided to play hooky. Luke tried to remember every detail of the face he'd seen, or thought he'd seen. It had been younger than either of the Sports family's brothers, softer, hadn't it? Maybe it was a thief, or a maid come early. No, it had been a child. He didn't even let himself think what another child in the house would be. He stared for hours at the Sports family's house, but no face reappeared. Nothing happened until 6, when the 2 Sports family boys drove in their Jeep, unloaded their football gear, and carried it into the house. They didn't run out screaming about being robbed, and he'd seen no thief leave. He'd seen no maid leave. At 6:30, Luke reluctantly climbed down from his perch when he heard his mother's knock on the door. He sat down on his bed and muttered a distracted, "Come in." She rushed to hug him. "Luke, I'm sorry. I know you were just trying to help, and everything is amazingly clean. I'd love it if you could do this every day. But your father thinks I mean, you can't. Luke was so busy thinking about the face in the window that at first he couldn't figure out what she was talking about. Oh, the bread, the house cleaning, the radio. That's okay, Luke mumbled. But it wasn't, and it never would be. His anger came back. Why did his parents have to be so careful? Why didn't they just lock him in one of the trunks in the attic and be done with it? Can't you talk to him? Luke asked. Can't you convince him? Mother pushed Luke's hair back from his face. I'll try, she said, but you know he's just trying to protect you. We can't take any chances. Even if the face in the window of the sports family house was another third child, so what? Luke and the other kid could live right next door all their lives and never meet. Luke might never see the other kid again, and he'd certainly never see Luke. Luke lowered his head. What am I supposed to do? He asked. There's nothing for me to do. And am I supposed to just sit in this room the rest of my life? Mother was stroking his hair now. It made him feel itchy and irritable. Oh, Lukey, she said, you can do so much. Read and play and sleep whenever you want. Believe me, I'd like to live a day of your life right about now. No, you wouldn't, Luke muttered, but he said it so softly he was sure Mother couldn't hear. He knew she wouldn't understand. If there was a third child in the sports family, would he understand? Did he feel the way Luke did? All right, let's do chapter 10 too. Chapter 10. When Luke went down to supper, he saw that Mother had set his two loaves of bread out on the china plate she used for holidays and special occasions. She was showing off the bread the way she used to tape up the crooked drawings Matthew and Mark brought home from school when they were little. But something had gone wrong. Maybe Luke hadn't used enough yeast, or he kneaded the dough too much or too little, and the loaves had turned out flat. They looked lopsided and pathetic in the center of the table. Luke wished Mother had just thrown them away. It's cold out now. Nobody noticed if you pulled the shades. Why can't I sit at the table with all of you? He asked when he reached the bottom of the stairs. Oh, Luke, Mother started. Someone might see your shadow through the shade, Dad said. They wouldn't know it was mine, Luke said. But there'd be five. Someone might get suspicious. Someone might get suspicious, Mother said patiently. Luke, we're just trying to protect you. How about a big slice of your bread? There's cold beef and canned beans, too. Resignedly, Luke sat down on the stairs. Matthew asked about the auction Dad had gone to. I drove all that way for nothing, Dad said disgustedly. I waited 4 hours for the tractors to come out, and then I couldn't even afford the first bid. At least you got home in time to fix that back fence before dark, Mother said, cutting the bread. And yell at me, Luke thought bitterly. What was wrong with him? Nothing had changed except he'd maybe seen a face that maybe belonged to someone like him. Matthew and Mark suddenly noticed the bread Mother was doling out. What's wrong with that? Mark asked. I'm sure it'll taste fine, Mother said. It's Luke's first try, Luke muttered, and my last. Too softly for anyone to hear. There were advantages to sitting on the other side of the room from everyone else. Luke made bread? Mark said incredulously. Yuck. Yeah, and I put special poison in one of the loaves that only affects 14-year-olds, Luke said. He pantomimed death, clutching his hands around his own neck, letting his tongue hang out of his mouth, and lolling his head to the side. If you're nice to me, I'll tell you which loaf is safe. That shut Mark up, but earned Luke... Bless me. That shut Mark up, but earned Luke a frown from Mother. Luke felt strange about the joke anyway. Of course, he'd never poison anyone, but if something had happened to Matthew or Mark, would Luke have to hide anymore? Would he become the public's second son, free to go to town and school and everywhere else that Matthew and Mark went? Could his parents find some way to explain a new child already 12 years old? It wasn't something Luke could ask. He felt guilty just thinking about it. Mark was making a big ceremony out of bringing the bread to his mouth. I'm not scared of you, he taunted, and took a big bite. He swallowed with great difficulty and pretended to gag. Water! Water! Quick! He gulped down half his glass and glared at Luke. Tastes like poison, all right. Luke bit into his bread. It was dry and crumbly and tasteless, not like Mother's at all. And everybody knew it. Even Dad and Mother had pained expressions on their faces as they chewed. Dad finally pushed a slice away. "That's okay, Luke," he said. "I'm not sure I'd want any son of mine getting too good at baking anyhow. That's what a man gets married for." Matthew and Mark guffawed. "Getting married soon, Luke?" Mark teased. "Sure," said Luke, struggling to sound as devil-may-care as Mark, "but don't think I'd invite you to the wedding." He felt a cold, hard lump in his stomach. That wasn't the bread. Of course, he'd never get married or do anything. He'd never leave the house. Mark switched to teasing Matthew, who evidently did have a girlfriend. Luke watched the rest of his family laughing. "May I be excused?" Luke asked. Everyone turned to him in surprise. Usually he was the last one to make that request. Mother often begged Matthew and Mark, "Can't you wait and talk to Luke a little bit longer?" "Done already?" Mother asked. "I'm not very hungry," Luke said. Mother gave him a worried look, but nodded anyway. Luke went to his room and climbed onto the stool by the back fence. In the dark, it was easier than ever to see into the houses of the new neighborhood. Their windows were lit up against the night. Some families were eating like his. He could see one set of 4 people around the dining room table, and one set of 3. Some families had their curtains or shades drawn, but sometimes the material was thin and he could still see shadows of people inside. Only the Sports family had all their windows totally blocked, covered by heavy blinds.